Welcome to Expert Views on ADR, a podcast about simplifying the traditional African method of settling disputes or the appropriate dispute resolution ADR in a bid to attract more users to settle their disputes or conflicts with mediation, ombuds, collaborative law, arbitration, restorative justice, early dispute resolution, negotiation, conciliation, and of course, early neutral evaluation. My name is DrChinweEgbunike, the Marketing Liaison of Ombuds Day 2024 American Bar Association Dispute Resolution and the host of Expert Views on ADR video podcast show. I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Ed Watt to the EVA show. He started his 40-year career in transportation as a front-line worker at the New York City Transit Authority. He rose to the position of financial secretary of the largest transit local in North America. He's currently the principal of WattADR, an alternative dispute resolution practice. Since beginning his practice in 2021, he has mediated over 80 disputes. He mediates in Queens County and Long Island dispute resolution centers. Welcome to the show, Mr. Ed.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so very much for honoring the invitation. So without further ado, the first question is, what is ADR and does it present a suitable mechanism in advancing bullying, harassment, and of course, discrimination issues in the workplace?
Well, alternative dispute resolution is a number of different techniques or forums for solving disputes. There's arbitration, mediation, ombuds, as noted in your resume, is a fantastic way also to deal with these things. But briefly, that's the quick overview.
Okay, so what are the advantages? Do you think they're suitable in, settling this discrimination, harassment, and bullying?
Well, by far, mediation and an ombuds program are, to my mind, superior to arbitration. In the U.S., arbitration basically defends or hears out the rights of the parties involved.
Yeah.
And it's final and binding. Now, at any point in the process, labor arbitrations, people can withdraw and settle, but once it's submitted and a decision is rendered by and usually one person, by the arbitrator, then it's final and binding. And even recourse to the courts is very limited.
Thank you so very much for your insight. So when it comes to litigation, how do you see that?
Yeah, so litigation is a fourth way of going to the courts. You ask for ADR, so that's alternative dispute resolution. Litigation, fortunately or unfortunately, is usually the go-to. It's the prevalent one. Takes years and years and years. It benefits people of means and leaves behind much of the workforce. We used to say, sure, you can sue in 8 years and a trip to the Supreme Court and hundreds of thousands of dollars just in paper, and it used to be paper, court fees, the like. It's extremely expensive, and a lot of places have used mediation as a alternative to that and a cheaper way, and certainly in presumptive mediation throughout the courts, not only on workplace issues, they've been pushing for mediation.
Okay, thank you so very much for your insights. So to what extent are employees encouraged to use ADR to settle disputes related to discrimination, harassment, and bullying in America?
Well, I'm not an expert on the EEOC system, but many of the federal agencies have a mechanism where complaints that are filed are referred to mediation before they can proceed. So that's one thing that employees, but other than that, unfortunately, so many people, and I'm sure this is pretty common around the world, they engage with what one practitioner calls silent conflict. You don't like the person that you're working for, or your coworker, or even a subordinate, but you don't, for a host of reasons, you don't surface that conflict. And so that's a primary barrier to any conflict being resolved.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that reminds me of, I think one of your articles you mentioned toxic workplaces, curing toxic workplaces. So before you sort of elaborate on that, what is toxic? What exactly do you mean by toxic workplaces, and how can that be cured?
Well, a toxic workplace is a place where your mental health is in jeopardy. As you mentioned before, bullying. So there's bullying, there's harassment, and by the way, general harassment under the private sector laws and public sector laws in the U.S. is not actionable. You can't take it to court. So unless you have a mechanism in place, like an ombuds program or a mediation program or a peer review, which very few people have, then you have. If you don't have those in place, you either have to go to litigation and arbitration, or or just suck it up. If it is that you are harassed because of race, sex, religion, national origin, and a number of other things covered in federal litigation and in state litigations which track it, then you have no recourse. Perhaps you'll have a union that has some recourse, but most of that is ad hoc. There's very little that's prescribed. So it depends then again on your relationship with your union rep and their view of, that's the way we do it around here. That's the culture. So that could be defeating as well, if that's the situation that you're in. But there's no prescribed course of action for just general harassment. But there's other things there. There's favoritism. There's lack of psychological safety, being afraid to say something's wrong. And of course, the safety literature is littered with, disasters from the Challenger on down of people not able to get the right information to the right level in order to stop disasters from happening.
Oh, thank you, Ed. So are you trying to say that there are no laws and employers' legal obligations to prevent and address such behaviors when they occur?
Well, it's worse than that. It's as Donna Hicks in her books on dignity, and Monica Valcour in her writings talk about, people aren't trained. Managers and supervisors are not trained to deal with matters of dignity, and matters of dignity, which are also include assaults on identity. They're not focused on in the workplace. In transit, where I come from, one very important thing to do is to make sure that that every vehicle, bus, train, et cetera, gets out in the morning for morning and afternoon rush hour. Make score, as some properties call it. That's the urgent thing. And the managers and supervisors aren't trained on how to do this conflict, which, by the way, I'm offering workshops to train supervisors and managers on using mediation techniques, reflecting, reframing, et cetera, to solve disputes, to resolve disputes among their direct reports. They could also use them among their peers if they'd like. That's fine. These are the same techniques. But when you reflection, as used in transformative mediation, is, to my mind, one of the highest forms of active listening and to showing people that you're hearing them. And you know, after all is said and done, and this is true in litigation, I'll go into that in a second, for people want to be heard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
at one point, the vast majority of lawsuits on, excuse me, on medical malpractice was because the surgeons just did not tell the loved ones of someone who passed away what actually happened. So if they were listened to, if they were heard, and then the lawsuits would have gone away. And I think the same is true for the workplace today, that our equal employment opportunity complaints could be reduced. It was done so in the post office 20 or so years ago. There's a lot of literature on that for all of those avid research folks out there like me to look it up. Excuse me a minute. And it reduced the number of complaints over race. The post office saw this as a way to change a door through which they could change the culture in the place. And the other piece of writing is a research perspective that I wrote for the Mineta Transportation Institute on improving retention through third-party intervention. And two of the paths I point to, one is mediation. Transformative would be the best for the workplace. And the other is an ombuds program.
Okay.
In an ombuds program at NIH, again, another research paper I didn't write, talks about how you can use individual complaints to identify systemic problems.
Okay. Thank you so very much. So why is transformative mediation best suited for workplace conflict?
Well, because it deals primarily with supporting the parties in their conversation, and the mediator stays out. So this is a model of mediation that hands the process entirely over to the parties. It doesn't ask any questions, which we all know sometimes questions can be leading questions. So the questions, excuse me here, the questions are meant to be supportive and mostly about process. Would you like to talk more? Would you like to stop talking now? Would you like to end this mediation if you don't get what you want? And again, so it's self-determination, as all forms of mediation aspire to be. But to my mind, it's more suitable to the workplace. It's more interested in the long-term relationship than it is in a particular short-term.
Okay, thank you so very much. So essentially, it's more interested in mending their relationship.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.
That is correct. Because many times, and Donna Hicks says this in her books on dignity, they're at negotiations. This is, you know, she has experience worldwide in this. Her mentor was Bishop Desmond Tutu, and knew a little bit about conflict. And basically, it occurred to her that the underlying issues had to do with people's dignity and respect in addition to. So before they could solve the problem at hand, they had to deal with those issues.
Okay, thank you so very much for sharing that. I wanted to, okay, I think, can I ask you about what are the common barriers that employees face when reporting such behaviors?
Well, like I said, the most organizations aren't trained to deal with these. There are some that are, and not specifically, but trained to deal with dignity. So, of course, the very first one is the culture in here. You know, just suck it up. That's the way we do things around here. You know, or people dismiss it. But that's all part of the culture, right? People dismiss it. Oh, they were only kidding, or why are you making waves, or just go about and do your business. So there's all sorts of cultural reasons why people don't report it. And after the cultural ones, there's financial reasons for that. And quite frankly, when some people raise these things, they are in fear of losing their employment. So that's the biggest monetary hurdle, right? Even before you go and look for an attorney. And by the way, the numbers, I don't have them handy right now, but the numbers of EEOC complaints settled and the dollar amounts that's under federal agency that we have here have gone up. Some complaints have gone up 50%, and the money that is paid out is gone up something like 25%. In the, I think, 22 to 23. Don't quote me, but those are the trends on the statistics, that they're rising. So it helps retention, and it helps cut your costs in lawsuits, and it makes it more makes your workplace more productive. And any of the research on psychological safety will tell you the same thing, that places that encourage people to speak up have all sorts of better bottom line KPIs, all statistics that the business community is always very interested in.
Yeah, thank you so very much. So, Ed, can you sort of explain or sort of give us tips on how organizations can create a culture of inclusion and diversity that would encourage employees to speak up when faced with these issues?
Well, there's many books on that subject, and I have written none of them on this. But again, I think for many hospitals and universities in the U.S. have ombuds programs, and they do point to a decrease in a lot of the problems, again, that the business community has long cited, retention, et cetera, and an ombuds does not reports directly to the CEO, but all of the information that they have there is confidential, unless the person bringing the problem, it's not yet at the complaint stage, but bringing the problem to the ombuds says, yes, I'd like to have a sit down with someone. An ombuds program basically informs people who are having problems at the workplace, different paths and different options that are available to them. And they make note and de-identify. Yes, we have X amount of cases of sexual harassment, racial discrimination, bullying, et cetera, and then they report the aggregate to the principal of the organization, and then they can take the steps necessary to hopefully to cure these problems in the workplace.
Okay, thank you so very much. So what cultural nuances aid in abating discrimination, harassment, and bullying in the workplace?
Well, unfortunately, the broader culture, is just so where you've seen, again, unfortunately, in many places, there's a lot of strife over immigration and other things. Most recently, obviously, in the UK, but perennially in the US. So that broader culture is a problem, because the workplace is a microcosm of that, and people have to. And many good employers have said, you have to leave that stuff at the door. You can't bring that in here, to their credit, because it is the law here that you have to have you can't have a hostile workplace.
Okay. So can I ask you a personal question, Ed?
Sure.
Okay. So
I don't know if I'll answer it, but you can ask.
I think it's a simple question. So have you experienced bullying, discrimination, or harassment at the workplace?
Personally, I can't look to a place. I mean, it was a very long time ago that I was in those environments, but but I can tell you that I have witnessed a tremendous amount of it. Very early on, I was a union activist and a chief steward very quickly in my career. So, I viewed my role as being the shield for a lot of those things. And under a lot of pressure way back in the 80s, our union put I think they called it an employees' rights clause. And you could actually, and that was the only mechanism to bring something that was nasty to the attention of people that could solve it. That was the only formal. I mean, you could always have informal discussions. So in my dealings in that capacity, a supervisor said some things to me they shouldn't have said. And to my knowledge, I'm the only one that ever went to arbitration with that clause in the contract. And I'll have to check and see if it's still there today. And but I saw scores and scores, if not I've seen hundreds and thousands of places of situations where people were harassed. And we've seen one where it went the other way. It didn't always go from top down. We saw, I can think of several instances where people harassed the supervisor. Told the supervisor, you just go stand over there and we'll take care of the work, right? Leave us alone because you don't know what you're doing. And in another case, there was a frontline worker, again, this is many years ago, threw a rope that some said was shaped like a noose, and others disputed that, on the desk of an African-American supervisor. And when I said many years ago, that's only because that's where my experience is limited to, and I don't mean to say that any of that is better or cured today, because it's obviously not.
So thank you so very much for that, providing the information. I also want to find out, when you went to arbitration, how was the workplace? Were you ostracized? Did the HR protect you? You know, how conducive was your workplace when you made that report?
Well, like I said, I was the chief steward. There were 800 bus operators that I dealt with the problems all the time, and some of the higher ups on both sides might have accused me of harassing them, just to my mind, of being assertive and making sure that this got taken care of. So I had from most people in most supervision, almost entirely, I had respect from them. So there was not any personal thing. And then of course they knew that I would not do anything to make myself vulnerable because I was brought up on charges by several times by both management and the union. So I couldn't sit here and with a straight face and tell you that I thought I was bullied because I bullied back, so to speak.
Okay, thank you so very much.
And I don't mean to minimize bullying by saying that. So that levity, is probably not appropriate. Sorry.
Definitely it's not appropriate. Oh, so finally, can you expand more on when creating safe spaces at the workplace? How can ADR be utilized in tackling discrimination, bullying, and harassment?
Well, the best thing to do is for organizations to take a good look at their dispute resolution system. And if they think they don't have one, they're wrong, because it's a default system, right? If they don't have anyone in there, but they should look at their arbitration systems. They should look at the number of lawsuits that they've incurred. Unfortunately, where I come from in transit agencies, it varies. Like many silos, sometimes they're not responsible. Sometimes the municipality is responsible for these and the actual transit agency isn't. responsible for the lawsuits. They pay out the claims, torts. That's both with accidents and with lawsuits. But they should start to analyze from the top down how their dispute resolution system works, and then compare the value of mediation and ombuds programs, and also peer training. Some of the transit agencies have mentor programs, which are very good. They should use those mentor programs to funnel the dispute resolution. And you know, I thought I said this at the beginning, but if I didn't, the toxicity is not only up and down. The toxicity is also peer to peer. How many times there's someone who's different than you, whether it's race, special needs, or someone's, you know, have other things that are none of your business, basically, or problems going on they keep to themselves. Maybe they're an introvert, and then they get bullied in the workplace by their coworkers. So starting those, and again, the head of the organization, the agency is responsible for keeping the workplace non-toxic by law. So it would help them. It would help retention. It help absenteeism. There's all sorts of, again, research on that we don't have time to go into.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of money savers involved in smoothing out the workplace.
Okay, thank you so very much. So what I hear you say is that it is important for workplaces to have ADR mechanisms,
I believe.
Yeah, to fall back on.
Essential, yes.
Essential. And also it's important for them to train employers, employees, everyone.
Absolutely. It's important to talk about these things.
Okay. All right. Thank you so very much, Mr. Ed, for coming on the show. This is a masterclass. I thank you for sharing your perspectives, insights, and the learning you shared with us. I believe that HR and organizational leaders would be open to embrace all the benefits associated with ADR that you listed herein, and of course, actively create a safe space in their organizations and institutions through its implementation. Yeah,
yes, I would hope so. And thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for having me.
Thank you so very much. All right, you take good care of yourself. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
Yes.